basically we bring them in at a table with mediators, community mediators that we do train. And those mediators are actually trained for 40 hours, and they receive additional training in terms of in-service and debriefing sessions that we have with them. So once at the table, the mediator, both of them expose their points of view, and at the end, the idea is that youth would actually restore back and give back to the society, also give back something to their parents. So we asked for them to actually write apology letters, okay, to their parents and also to the victim. Okay, the apology letter is basically a process that comes from the mediation session. The youth has the opportunity to actually hear the victim and explain themselves, and vice versa. The victim has the opportunity to see that this is just a youth, that it's not a bad youth, it's just a person that's making bad choices. Okay, and consequently today we had a mediation. Two little youth that actually had a battery case, and at the end, both parents came in with both kids, and at the end, Steve, one of the offender's parents drove the victim's parents back home. So this is what restoration does. This is when we bring them back to to society. We give them back some kind of standing in society. So that was actually very good. Okay, how empathy works in this process. Empathy actually works in this process by giving the opportunity to both parties to humanize what happened at the event or at the incident. So that's by asking end-of questions, by actually sympathizing with both parties, by maintaining a very neutral environment and safe environment as well, because we find that some victims are actually afraid of coming, to meet their offender. And their offenders, most of the times, what they feel is that kids, when they do something wrong, they run away. So it's very brave from them to come back to meet somebody that they can't before. So, any questions so far? We doing okay?
You just say you're co-mediated?
We do. Thank you for that. We do actually co-mediate the mediations. Most of the time, that's a model. We co-mediate sometimes because we're all volunteers. We sometimes we send out the notices and maybe we have one mediator. But the idea, the model is to actually co-mediate. Gives a great opportunity to mediators to learn different styles, to actually debrief. I think it's a very good tool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have plenty of volunteers, or what's that situation like?
We are always looking for volunteers, always, especially Spanish volunteers. We run our trainings once a year. We run it together in collaboration with Cal State Dominguez Hills. They provide the basic mediation training, and we provide further training. So our next training will be May, the second week of May, and all the way around, it's actually 4 weekends, all the way to June. So if you want more information, I have my card, and I think that I bring some flyers here, so you can actually have a look at it.
And there's applications on the website.
That's right.
And training dates, so either are on the site or will be shortly. And also the thing about co-mediation is that it's a way of quality control.
That's right.
Because one mediator we had one who done literally 100 mediations, and she went and co-mediated with somebody who was brand new, and that person had gotten way off track from the basic model. And the way we found out was the new mediator said, wait a minute, said to us, I wasn't trained like that, what's going on? And so we found out that she had gone to some other training and gotten all enthusiastic about that, and so it's a quality control measure as well.
That is true. It is.
There was a question back there.
So you meet with the offender first?
We actually we call the offender on the phone.
Okay.
Yes.
And then the victim?
Yeah. So you call the offender first. You talk to the parent first. Then you ask for permission to talk to the youth. And then that's when you after you talk to the youth, you call back to the victim.
But the conversation is just about, are you willing to take
Yes.
part?
Right.
There are a lot of these are called VORP programs around the country where the volunteer goes to each party's house, meets with them in advance. That turned out to be not realistic in big city LA, you know.
Okay. That's how we use our things. But my question is, what do you do if you meet with the offender, they agree to mediate, meet with the victim, they agree to mediate, and then the offender decides not?
What we do then, we actually close that case as a divorce and we open a family mediation case. Because most of the time, those incidents create a lot of tension in the family unit. And we called, well, before we do that, before we close the divorce case, we actually call the probation officer and we ask for permission to see, okay, do you want this person to actually go through a family mediation?
What do you do in case of the victim that was willing to do it?
Those are
victim
kind
wants
of
to-
rare,
Can I
right?
just
Sorry,
answer?
isn't it kind of rare that the
It's-
youth pulls out of a meeting? I don't think we've.
Okay, let me answer that. If the victim doesn't want to come in, we actually call the victim back and we reschedule. If the victim does not want to come in, which sometimes with battery cases that happens, we just close the case.
Right, I mean, for the victim, if the offender agrees, the victim agrees, then the offender decides not to, what do you do with the victim?
Okay.
And
That's
that
very-
is the case that we've had before, and.
I'll tell you something.
Very
Kind of
rare.
like that, no.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. We do not get referrals from the victims. We get referrals from the offender.
No,
Okay.
she's meaning, sorry,
No,
she's meaning, the kid says yes, the victim says yes, and then the kid says, no, I changed my
No,
mind.
she's actually asking what you do
Right.
with the victim.
That's what she's saying.
But you said what you do with the
Care
victim.
for the victim, because
Yeah.
in a sense, that's re-victimizing the victim.
I'll tell you something. We do not, we receive the referrals actually for the offender. So the victim has no obligation to actually come. So that victim is invited to come to that process to find closure. So in your case, if you're actually serving the victim, first, and you actually call it the offender, that would be something that
No, that's not the circuit, but the case
I
that
think
you
I'm
said,
And
understanding.
I know it's rare, but it has happened.
it happened to you guys, okay, great. I don't think it's happened to us.
No.
If they pack out, they just don't show.
Mhm.
The kid runs off and doesn't come to the meeting, and that, we apologize to the victim, and there's really nothing we can do, and we don't really have a program for the victim in that
Okay, so
case.
that was my question, is there any thoughts about doing something for the victim, like for the offender, we would do a family conference, but for the victim, there's no kind of.
No, except to assure them that we're going to keep working with the youth to have a family conference.
Yeah.
And there might be in that family conference some agreement with the parent that
But
we might share with
But
them.
you're assuming that the victims are youth. Sometimes
No.
victims are not youth, they're adults, and they don't want to come in, they don't want to participate in the program. Yeah.
Go ahead, another question.
So, just a few minutes ago, you said that one of your long-term mediators varied from your model, your mediation model. So what are the specific components of your mediation model? Because there are a number of different kinds of models out there, and what are your specific components?
That's your answer because.
Okay, well, Mary Ellen knows this.
I do, I do.
We essentially, we set ground, it's fairly standard, we set ground rules. We ask the youth, tell us what happened, and because youth are often shut down and are expecting to be lectured and all that stuff, we try to bring them out, open them up, get them to talk about it. We might ask them, what was it like when your parents came to pick you up from the police, because that gets into emotional. And we ask the victim, what was it like for you? How did you feel when you came upon your car and everything else like that? And once all the stuff comes out, then we say to the victim, what would you like Johnny to do to make it right? Or Johnny, what would you like, what are you willing to do to make it right to Mrs. Jones? And they reach an agreement. What this person was doing was giving them a speech and ordering them to hug the victim. She just went completely off the reservation. But that basic model is what we do which is a fairly standard victim offender model.
How directive and how directive are you in that whole process?
We are not.
I'm talking about the people who are facilitating.
We
Because
are
you
not.
just said you may ask this, you may ask that. So I'm asking, what kinds of strategies do you use in terms of directivity, directing the conversation and managing, facilitating?
Well,
I can answer that.
yeah, go ahead.
I can answer that. Okay. I am actually one of the persons that helps with the training and actually set up the curriculum. One of the things that I have not a problem with, but I'm actually want to make sure that every mediation session is actually the same, it's conducted in the same way, that each case is actually has the opportunity the offender and the victim had an opportunity to actually experience the same thing. The way that we assure ourselves that is the case, we actually have divided the mediation session in different phases. Okay, so you have, we already know that mediation has 3 phases: introduction, middle, and conclusion at the end, right? And the agreement, right? The agreement. But what we've done, is actually divided into phases, and we are directive in the sense that we actually work with that offender, the day of the event. Okay, so what happened in the morning? What did you do? What happened when you arrived there? We are very directive in telling the story.
You're actually asking
Yes.
clarifying questions.
And we actually very directive in that sense, because we want that victim to actually know what was the state of mind of that youth previous to that that incident. And then what we do is we continue, once that youth actually asked, once that youth finished telling the story, we continue to actually asking them what happened when the parent arrived, and what happened when they arrived home, or what happened later. We do that, and then we actually move on to the victim and ask them, what have they heard? And we're not as directive to the victim, but we are very directive to the offender, because we want that story to be told correctly. So yeah.
And we might, in the case of the victim, we might ask them, if they were in a store, let's say, we might ask them, well, how did you personally feel? Do you personally feel when a child is arrested? Or how you personally felt when the moment you came up to the car and you saw it was broken into? But we'll then come back to the youth, right, and say, what did Mrs. Jones just say? Do you understand, Johnny, how she feels? Oh, yeah, I understand. Well, tell me, what did she just say? And if he can't articulate it, we're going to go back to the victim and say, could you say that again so that Johnny is really clear how you feel? And then we'll come back to Johnny, so what did you get from it? So that we make sure that they understand. And we also try to make the agreement something that emerges from them rather than us giving. And we have in the training, if you're thinking of asking a question, making a statement, ask a question.
Do you promote a dialogue between the 2 parties?
That's the basic.
Yes, we do. And that actually, it's more so when we have family mediations as well.
A little bit about that, and then we're going to come to
Yes. Let's talk about the family mediations, and that's when we have a bit more freedom, because it's more about the relationships between parents and youth. And we do the same thing. We received all this the referrals from maybe teachers, probation department. Sometimes they're actually self-referrals. Sometimes we have already relationships with schools, and then we provide these family mediations. And what they do is, again, we call the youth, we call the parent. We invite them to the meeting, to the mediation session. Then we talk to the youth. We explain the process. We invite them. We invite the youth to the table, and we want to make sure that youth knows that they have a voice. Okay, I actually say invitation, because I think it's people need to feel comfortable on the onset. If we don't create that connection over the phone when we invite them, people are not going to come to the table with a trust, with a trust card, or with an idea that, okay, let me see, let's see whether I can talk to mom and dad, this time around. Because most of them they're screaming at each other. So that's what
They're
so
what?
They scream at each
They're
other.
screaming at each other, okay?
Yeah.
These are high conflict families that are
Yeah.
maybe haven't spoken to each other in 6 months, verge of runaway.
Yes.
We've had parents come to the probation department with the kids' clothes and say, put him in camp. I
Yeah.
can't do anything with him. So that you understand what, the context, yeah.
Yeah, it's very, yes.
Oh, no, I just wasn't sure if you were finished speaking. I just had a question about, in terms of when you're working with youth and you are meeting the victim offender program, at what point in either, them being detained or the detention at any point, or the pre-adjudicative, I was just wondering, at what point are you meeting the actual mediation hearing? Where is the youth at
So that was my first question. And then my second question is, how do you deal with the instability of the youth offender in terms of youth that are obviously